Good afternoon and welcome to our presentation, obviously on optimising project placement and an insight from me and Samantha. So my name is Neve Horn.
And I'm Samantha.
And we're two third-year Cardiff University students, and we're going to be discussing our third and final placement, which was in the Bevan University Health Board. And obviously, as Claire's outlined, it's a project placement, and we shared an educator called Diana, who is here today.
So just a little bit about our project title. So Living Well Through Activity in Care Homes, Integrating Health into the Care Home Sector Scoping and Improvement Project. So when we first got released our timetable placements, that was always really nerve-wracking. And I remember it said complex care team, community, physical. And I was like, great, not one of those strange project placements. However, later on, I received an email where it said project placement handbook. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, and immediately had so many questions and queries about it. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about what we sort of get to. So hopefully this will sort of start to demystify what we've been doing. We got in contact with our educator Diana and received some background context of the project, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we started to try and arrange a meeting online, which was really difficult, aligning 3 busy calendars, but we did manage to do it. Neither of us had any prior experience for projects, so we had a lot of questions and queries around it, but we found the pre-placement visit really insightful and really useful. And I have a quote from Diana saying, "Pre-placement visits are key to make initial links and share details of project plan, ensuring any queries, concerns or apprehensions which can be addressed for all parties, optimising the success of the project." So initial thoughts, I've touched on it a little bit, but we were very nervous and apprehensive, very curious to see what would be involved. But I feel like we were very excited to see what opportunities that we'd get, and we absolutely loved it. So Diana had collated some information and created her own information pack, sort of just providing some context around the project. So we knew that in this case we would be going into care homes and seeing what activity provision which was being carried out. We also were provided information on the commissioning area of the Bevan Health Board. So we also got to see the Living Well Through Activities toolkit, which was made in 2015 and then updated in 2019. So we became really familiar with this toolkit as we went through, and throughout the activity, it was a focus on embedding activity in care homes and process and the staff responsibilities. So in the information pack, it was a lot of background and context. So we were looking at lots of policies and legislation, the social and leisure in Care Home Policy 2021, outlining the right for every service user under the access, leisure, time and resources to do things they wish to do. Also considered NICE guidelines, and then we also continued to adhere to the RCOT codes of conduct.
So before we actually started doing visits in the care homes and kind of ascertaining what was going on the front line, we thought there's no time to waste. So we started researching existing activity provision within the area, but we also did, a broader search of looking at what was going on nationally, what care homes had access to. We also looked at kind of the legislation that governs carers and activity coordinators. We also had a lot of opportunities to attend clinical visits, so shadowing our educator, other members of the team, nurse assessors, other OTs. We also had lots of opportunities to go to, stores and see what was going on in the warehouse and kind of getting to grips with the clinical side of the team as well as the project. We also then produced a project kind of advert for the care homes. Obviously, they have high staff turnover, they have a lot of agency staff, so we felt it really important to give them an understanding of why we were there, who we were, that kind of thing, which I'll show on the next slide. And then we also established our initial aims, so kind of what we wanted to achieve from the project, because Diana had given us quite a lot of like free rein to kind of run with it. So we thought initial aims was a great place to start. So on the left, you can see the initial advert we gave to the care homes for them to kind of put on notice boards, kind of outlining what occupational therapy was, why we needed their support in the project, and kind of like what we wanted the outcomes to be. And for those who aren't familiar, on the right, you can see the Living Well Through Activity in Care Homes toolkit. So what were the aims of the project? So one of our first aims was just to kind of ascertain what was actually going on in the area in terms of activity, particularly in care homes, because it was often looked at in hospitals, but not particularly care home sector. Our next goal was to identify any barriers and enablers to occupational engagement. This is to ensure that we're keeping that OT focus and kind of using our therapeutic skills. Then our next goal was to draw conclusions and make recommendations for the care homes. And a lot of ways we kind of wanted to do this was producing resources to further support them, and kind of like developing a greater understanding and knowledge of activity ourselves, so we can then apply our therapeutic skills and support the care homes.
So when we were going into the care homes, we knew there was going to be so much going on. So we made sure beforehand we were very prepared in what we were wanted to see in the care homes. So we looked at some observations such as activity provision and group activities. We saw so many great examples of activity examples. So we saw Knitter Natter unfold. So this was where the residents came into the lounge and they had so much going on. They had individuals who were knitting, some individuals were choosing the music, some people were sorting through the CDs, organising the wool, and some of them just really enjoyed sitting and watching. And I think that was a great example of how they were really able to justify and tailor the activities to each individual. We also observed some activities which were undergone in the care home. So we saw external entertainment. We also saw use of assistive technology. We saw the use of Arita being Bluetoothed onto a TV screen to allow a one-to-one activity to turn into a group activity. Another question which we raised nearer the end of our project was the role and definition of activity coordinator. So in all the care homes we visited, they did all have activity coordinators, but we really broke down the wording of activity and coordinator. When you think of the word coordinator, it normally means like preparing and planning. However, what we were seeing was a lot of activity coordinators were planning and then completing the activities too. So we were thinking, would it be better if the activity coordinator was actually planning and preparing and then handing it over to the carers to really like make sure that the activity provision was built into the roles and routines? Also the data collection that we did, so we used audits which RCOT have provided, interviews, CIW reports, note-taking and outcome measures that we made.
So then following the visits in the care homes, this is just kind of like what we did. So we were actually able to provide some assistive technology to a particular care home that we work quite closely with. So assistive technology can be, you know, any kind of range of products, but the ones that we were able to provide them was the robotic companion pets, which kind of like move and make noises, kind of like animals. And we also provided them with a happiness program, which is basically a 360-degree projector which can go on the ceiling, the floor, the walls, in people's beds, and it's like a really interactive assistive technology device. So they were really pleased with that. We then also worked with the assistive technology leads within the health board to kind of produce and develop their support guides. Because a lot of care homes had the assistive technology but weren't necessarily using it to its full potential because they weren't sure kind of how to. So we kind of suggested, you know, providing the support guide when they're given the technology, with kind of like training opportunities, QR codes, that kind of thing, so they can easily access all these resources. We then also kind of established that a lot of the care homes were doing great activities, and it was shared on their private Facebook group, for instance. But a lot of the care homes weren't actually communicating with one another and kind of sharing best practices, which I feel like in healthcare we get more opportunity to do because we have lots of MDTs and things like that. However, care homes don't have that connection with one another. So we kind of identified this and produced a Padlet, which is essentially like an online notice board for the care homes to kind of share best practices and ask questions and, oh, I'm really struggling with this. Is there anything you've tried which worked really well? And obviously we had a lot of liaison with the Royal College of Occupational Therapists, hence us being here today. And we also use the POP model again to kind of provide that OT focus and, applying theory to practice. And we did the POP model with kind of the care homes that we'd worked really closely with, just to kind of consolidate everything that we'd found in an occupational therapy kind of way. So another thing, obviously working on a project placement, we worked with each other. We'd never worked with each other before in university or anything like that. So we'd get to know each other on a personal and professional kind of level, kind of learn how the other one works and what works best for us as a team. And because we'd never done placements or anything together, we had different learning needs and different things we kind of needed to get from the project and different communication styles. So this project was a really great opportunity to kind of really practice collaborative working skills and adapting, communication and learning and being flexible. And also it links in very nicely with supervision, which I'll come on to discuss.
So an amazing opportunity was that we got to present a poster at the OT show. So our poster here on the left outlines the whole project that we have been doing. So we were able to talk to so many other OTs who were very passionate about activities, and there was a lot of interest in it. We printed out a little mini version of our poster, and when we came back, all of the posters were actually gone, and I think that really shows the scope and the sort of interest in this area. And also when one of the discussions that we had in front of the poster, we got in contact with OTs from Derbyshire who had a similar project going on. So they were really interested in our Padlet, which is in the QR code in the bottom right corner. And by being able to share and discuss what we've been doing in our project and discussing what they're doing in their project, it was really nice to just see the differences and similarities as to what everyone's doing for activity provision in care homes. We also knew we had a lot of first-hand knowledge about assistive technology, so when we were going around the OT show, we were really able to discuss and have really concise and really developing conversations with lots of people who are doing assistive technology and sort of bringing out all of these products and some things that we suggested to them and things that they could improve and develop. And I think that was really insightful for both of us. Coming out of this experience, we felt so empowered and confident in our project and really proud of ourselves. Neve also got asked a question which really prompted us to consider why OTs are needed in this area of job.
Yeah, so someone essentially asked me, like, why were we doing it? Why was it occupational therapy's business, and why wasn't it, the care home's responsibility to kind of, promote activity, which I thought was a really poignant question. It really got me to reflect and consider, the role of occupational therapy. And I think, our passion is activity, it's doing, it's giving people meaning and giving people, something that's so important to them. And I think the role of OT in the care home sector is really, it's an emerging role. And I think that it's potentially one that needs to be explored further. And, I think a lot of our discussions kind of were focused on the role of therapeutic skills within this sector and the fact that, we can further educate carers and clearly other members of, the MDT on the role of OT, particularly in care homes with activity. So another opportunity we had was attending conferences. So we attended several conferences during our placement. We attended one on the Hug, which is another piece of assistive technology equipment, and the creators of the Hug were actually there, and it was a really great opportunity to kind of provide some feedback and network with other people and their experiences in using this piece of assistive technology. And we kind of got involved in discussions at the end, and we're talking more about the fact that we don't necessarily need more assistive technology in the care home sector and in hospitals. We need more sustainability. So it's using our therapeutic skills to support people in using assistive technology as an intervention and involving it in activity, as opposed to just providing more assistive technology. And again, like I've touched on, we had lots of conversations with the assistive technology leads and meetings with the happiness program, which are the 360-degree projector company. So we had discussions with them at the OT show, like Samantha said, and also we engaged in a lot of their kind of like projects on Teams and things. So even more opportunities. So we're going to attend a CPD podcast to kind of like discuss our placement and our accomplishments, which will be shared within the university, this presentation. So we've had lots of liaisons with different members of RCOT discussing the Living Well Through Activity in Care Homes toolkit, and spreading the message of project placements. OT Week 2023. So obviously last year's theme was Occupation Matters, and our educator was very passionate about OT Week, and so with the whole team. So we were on the health board carousel. They did a life story within the team. They ran a project about what occupations are meaningful to people within the MDT, and that kind of went out amongst the health board, and there was also lots of cake, which is always great. Building relationships, so colleagues within the MDT and also wider organisations, so obviously with the assistive technology leads and within the care homes, and promotion of the project. So we also met with the practice development and education lead for occupational therapy in the health board, just to kind of reflect upon the placement and kind of demystify project placements.
So I feel like there's been so much development personally for me on this project placement. I was very apprehensive going in, so many questions, was really unsure of how I'd feel during the project placement, but I can really see so much growth in my confidence. I'm able to voice my opinions, I feel like, a little bit more confidently, and sharing ideas and really getting involved with things that I'm really passionate about. I was very worried about maybe not getting as much clinical experience, and I was worried that going into Band 5 next year would mean that maybe a project placement wouldn't be the most valuable going in. However, on reflection, it has been absolutely amazing, and I've learned so much talking to so many different professionals and carers, and I think it's really lovely to get those different perspectives. It was amazing support from the team, and they were so knowledgeable and they were so approachable. Any questions we could go to them and they'd give us a wealth of knowledge, and it was just such a lovely environment, and they've really helped us develop. And it's just an amazing team and so approachable, and I have definitely learned so much from this experience.
So in terms of my own personal development, I've used the career development framework to kind of highlight. On the left, that was just at the start of my second placement, and on the right is following this final placement. And I think the biggest area that really surprised me was the evidence research and development aspects. And I think, I didn't really anticipate that kind of going into this, but that's something that I've really reflected on, and I feel like, I actually have done that. I have really developed these skills, through audits and interviews and observations, and we wrote a report at the end of kind of the placement, which has also really supported our university work. I think as well, time management and organisational skills, so the balancing act of a project and like a clinical caseload. It was really, really useful to kind of hone in on those skills, because projects aren't going to go anywhere as soon as I've become a Band 5. I'm going to continue to be involved in them, so that kind of developing those skills is going to be really helpful. An adaptation of my approach to learning and practice, tailoring my communication skills and my body language to kind of ensure that people have an understanding of what we're doing, and, you know, to service users, to carers, and to the assistive technology leads, you know, who might not necessarily fully understand OT. I feel like they now have a great understanding. So yeah.
So post-placement thoughts, I feel like we've really come on leaps and bounds in our confidence, really empowered. I'm feeling really motivated going into my third and final year of placement. We feel really fulfilled and accomplished, but it's also very bittersweet to us. I suppose that we have been able to continue to think about the project because of this experience and the OT podcast that we're going to be doing, but it's also saying goodbye to the lovely team who we spent 11 weeks with. So we just have some thoughts from our educator, Diana. So Diana said that it's essential for equipping graduates with skills and knowledge of current and future practice. We definitely felt like this was such a great experience for us, and now we really have a passion for thinking about service improvement and the curiosity around that, and I think it's really helped us think about what we want to do in the future and really think about how projects can really support and facilitate our learning.
And I think as well,
no, go on.
I think as well, in terms of supervision, Diana said that obviously it needs to be flexible, and I think it definitely was. We had a lot of one-on-one supervision, but then we obviously had a lot of collaborative supervision because we were working collaboratively so much. It was so nice to have that dedicated time to kind of reflect upon our week and kind of discuss what progress we've made with the project and kind of organize like next steps, but also having that one-on-one supervision was obviously ideal for our own personal development and kind of reflecting on how far we've come in the placement. And we kind of just wanted to like finish on, you know, some potential thoughts and feelings and challenges like commonly associated with project placements. So obviously it could be really challenging to identify an area of service development, you know, time constraints, and it can be quite like a scary process. But obviously the positives outweigh the negatives. There's so many potential outcomes, you know, in terms of service development, CPD opportunities, not only for us, but also for our educator, you know, to kind of go to the OT show, go to all these conferences, engage in all these conversations, spread the word of OT. I think it's been invaluable for all of us.
So just a final word to summarise, we cannot recommend enough taking students on for project placements. This experience has been so invaluable to both of us, and we would like to thank our educator Diana Turner for her continued support and the doors that she's opened for us as a result of this project.
And thank you very much for listening. We'll now answer any questions.
Thank you both. That was absolutely brilliant. Well done. Oh, and references, amazing. Thank you so much.